Between speaking and silence, listening to stories and empowering our lives. Trish Hoteling, Kay Gerald, Laura Prescott, and Tony Shaw.
Storytelling has a rich history from the beginning of time. It is a means of communication among people. Narrative theory helps explain the meanings associated with the stories. Several people could experience the same phenomena, yet have different stories. The goal of narrative therapy is to determine the meaning of the stories and consider interpretations that may be more helpful. Principle 1. People communicate about their lives through the process of storytelling in verbal and written accounts and through artwork. You can see from this slide that narrative therapy can be used in diverse populations and settings. People who were in and survived Hurricane Katrina used journals to describe the traumatic events. People in nursing homes or the elderly use artwork to make memory books and life maps. And another study demonstrated how using narrative helped refugee children to reduce the symptoms of PTSD. Principle number 2, telling stories gives meaning to life experiences. When stories have multiple interpretations, they may be reauthored to find more liberating interpretations of the experience. Narrative therapy has been used extensively in family therapy, where there are often multiple interpretations by family members of the same experience. Parents of gay and lesbian teens have used storytelling to reauthor events and recognize that there is no absolute truth, but rather interpretations of meaning that can create a more helpful understanding. People with chronic illness or terminal illnesses have used storytelling to reflect on their lives and find meaning at the end of their lives.
Sharing stories helps us to give meaning to our life experiences. Narrative techniques are used to assist clients in modifying their narratives or stories that are unhelpful or ineffective. We have identified several settings amongst diverse populations where clients have benefited from narrative therapy, including elderly patients suffering from dementia who are told to cherish their memories instead of being frustrated by their inability to remember the present. Urban African American youth who learn to let go of internalized self-hatred while utilizing social media. Stroke survivors looking to rebuild their lives. Patients suffering from anorexia nervosa who learn to look past their appearance in order to better understand the root causes of their eating disorder. And people suffering from depression.
Principle 4 of narrative theory describes the process of externalization, which allows problems to become objectified and placed outside of the person rather than internalized. In this way, the client is able to explore alternative, more positive experiences and gain self-knowledge. An example of externalization can be found in the work of Rodney Herring. In 2013, Herring used narrative therapy to help address recreational tobacco use within the Native American population. Herring used externalizing questions to help individuals be able to understand their tobacco use from an objective and non-judgmental point of view. Questions included: how does your smoking affect your tribal community and/or relations? How do cigarettes taunt you to use them when you don't really want to? What emotions accompany smoking that lead you to use? When do these thoughts of smoking come to you? Where are you? In what situation? Who is around? These types of externalizing questions help the client to achieve some distance from the problem and understand how it impacts both themselves and others, with the hope being to establish new insight and self-awareness, contributing to healthy outcomes and heightened quality of life.
Limitations of narrative theory. Narrative theorists contend that the act of diagnosing is fraught with power imbalances, putting clients at risk for discrimination and compounded losses in micro, meso, and macro systems. The lack of commonly recognized labels, however, has ramifications, particularly for social workers, administrators, policymakers, and researchers. It's not a good fit for all environments. Diagnostic deconstruction creates tension when providing clinical services in highly regimented environments that focus on getting reimbursed through managed care, for instance. In addition, the lack of common language to discuss clients can create confusion in cross-disciplinary team meetings. But perhaps one of the biggest limitations of narrative theory is that it is fundamentally at odds with the central tenets of evidence-based practice, which is predicated on the notion of objectivity, acquisition of facts that lead to knowledge. Narrative theory rejects this notion of objectivity and truth that is decontextualized. Therefore, there haven't been many studies showing efficacy, which speaks to the need for more published research that values ethnographic, cross-cultural, qualitative approaches using transcript analysis to generate new findings for the field. The end of this presentation provides some final thoughts highlighting strengths of narrative theoretical approaches. In earlier slides, we've emphasized multiple applications of narrative clinical interventions in diverse settings with myriad populations. Narrative approaches are confluent with storytelling traditions used by so many cultures throughout the world. The stories convey culturally specific messages inundated with images and meanings passed on from one generation to the next through oral, artistic, and written expression. The stories are made alive through the people who tell them, creating immediacy, intimacy, and reciprocity between narrator and witness. They powerfully emphasize possibilities for change, strengths, and resilience because stories themselves are not static. By their nature, they are nonlinear, interactive, and change over time with the retelling and the unfolding of new discoveries and insights. The interventions encourage exploration of identity, language, and power, offering opportunities for new stories to emerge while transforming narrator and witness, and indirectly the multidimensional systems within which they both live. Witnessing calls us to listen, to dive into shadowlands where unknowns reside. Stories yet unspoken beg us to search for ourselves along landscapes of meaning. Courage has a sound even in silence, daring what cannot be uttered to finally speak.